And welcome back to New to Hill Country. We're here today with Robb Wolf, and Robb Wolf's going to talk to us about all the things going on with him. Before we get into that, we'll just quick shout out to our sponsors, SPG Texas Martial Arts and Yoga School. You know, we are the premier location for training in martial arts and yoga here in the New Braunfels area. If you are interested in getting involved in martial arts, but have always been a little intimidated and you always wanted some sort of safe entry, we're the place to start. You know, a lot of places are going to throw you in with the wolves and make you try to survive with a bunch of lions and tigers right away, which is, you know, that could suit certain people, but we like to give people a nice on-ramp where they actually learn a lot of the basic moves before they ever have to start putting it to any kind of test.
A good evidence of that is that we see an increase in the number of female members joining the gym and training, and it's been a wonderful thing to see as a woman. Just yesterday, Addie was just rolling a big guy with a perfect jiu-jitsu technique. That was such a great thing to see. So.
Yeah, and I'd add lots of old codgers like me too. So when you look at a martial arts school, if it's well run, you should see kids, women, old folks. Should be a spectrum. If it looks like it's all a bunch of guys getting ready to go compete in the UFC or an Oklahoma wrestling tournament, probably some great people, but might not be the perfect fit for you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's the absolute truth of it. And our other sponsor is Element. And actually, Robb is here today. So
the person.
Yeah, we have the person to talk about it because Robb is the person that put me on to Element. I've talked about that on previous episodes, but Robb and I met in Costa Rica, and he brought boxes of Element with him. And forgive me if I'm not correct here, Robb. That was like the launch of Element at that time.
It was close to the launch. Like we had been rolling for a bit, but that was super, super early in the company's history. We had launched in January of that year, and then I believe that was March. So I mean, we were only up and running for 2 months, basically. Yeah,
it was February, so it would have been just
February. Okay, so even closer. Yeah.
I remember just like you came down, you gave everybody boxes and was all like, "Oh, what's this? What's this?" Like, it's salty. That's what everybody said. It's really salty. Yeah, it's salty. But yeah, made a huge difference in Costa Rica with that 800-degree weather and just sweating like crazy. But yeah.
So tell us a little more about the background and what's great about Elements.
Oh gosh, I've eaten kind of a low carb diet for 22 years. I'm not religious about it, but I just find that I operate definitely best in that kind of lower carb range, and historically have felt generally good. Definitely my cognition is better, like my just thinking and being kind of quick on my feet in that regard. But just as kind of a side note, my wife and I co-founded the first and fourth CrossFit affiliate gyms in the world. So we were very early in the CrossFit scene, and I noticed that, really intense glycolytic activity like CrossFit or like jiu-jitsu, I just didn't really have a lower gear when I followed my standard fueling, and I would tinker with like pre-workout carbs and post-workout carbs, and it was pretty lackluster in the way that it would work, and I had a lot of kind of side effects. Like I would get back into like the blood sugar highs and lows and whatnot. And then some good friends of mine who became my coaches. I think every coach needs a coach if you want to keep progressing in anything. Tyler and Luis, they're the founders of an online program called Keto Gains, and I showed them what I was doing with my diet and everything, and they said, I don't think you're getting enough electrolytes, specifically sodium. And then, like most people have a tendency of doing, when a coach gives you good advice, you ignore it for at least a year, because surely you wouldn't listen to someone who has invested more time, energy, and skull sweat in a topic than you have. So of course you ignore them for a while, and then if they are a good coach, they're patient enough to wait you out until your idiocy causes sufficient suffering that you're like, okay, I'm ready to actually listen. And I finally listened. And when I really got my electrolytes on point, it just fixed everything. And granted, a low carb diet is not the right way to go for everybody, but man, it's a shockingly effective tool, even as kind of a reset. But I found that I could roll at a high work output and for hours at a time, and could do other, kind of high motor activities. And so these guys knew that this was a critical thing to get right. I became aware of how important it was to get electrolytes and sodium correct. And it through kind of an interesting chain of events, we decided to found this Element, company that is this electrolyte company. And truth be told, we weren't sure if this notion of a high sodium electrolyte would stick. And so the first couple of flavors that we launched, if it tanked as an electrolyte company, we wanted to be able to rebrand it as a margarita drink base. And so that's kind of the very 30,000 foot level of it. But, it was cool in that we really identified a need and built a product around a specific need. I've launched and done a lot of stuff thinking that people may need it and have had varying degrees of success. But if you can really identify a legitimate pain point that people have and then have a solution for it, it goes a long ways towards helping to guarantee some success on that.
Oh, totally. No, I know. Yeah, I recommend it to people almost constantly. And
all the new people coming in.
Yeah, so all the new people coming to the gym and just even people that don't come in the gym. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I always like, do you have like a lot of brain fog like throughout the day? It's like, yeah, I do. And it's like, give this a try. And because I'm always amazed, like even I consume a fair amount, but I'll have days I do a fair amount too. So it's like, I have days where I'm like, man, I feel kind of down, and I'm like, and I can't account for it exactly. And I'd be like, maybe just pop another element here. And it's like, zip, zip, zip. And I'm like back to like, engines full. And it's like, man, that was ridiculously effective. Like I can't even, that just it almost feels like cheating or something, like compared to, I don't know. I think, someone was saying this to me recently. It's like when you have those kinds of changes like that, often it's hard to, what's the word I'm looking for? You just get used to the normal. Like there's just like the normalness of like brain fog is what is normal for like most of the day. And then you change it and you're like, oh, I didn't actually have to have that feeling all the time. Like, wow. Like, huh. I mean, there's been a number, you and I have talked about stuff like that a lot, there's so many different things like that for me where it's just kind of like, when I talk to people too about like meditation or something, that's where it usually comes up. It's like, well, I feel fine. And I'm like, I know you do. Would it be awesome to feel great? Like, that would, like, you could be living in a world of VHS or you could be living in a world of Blu-ray. Which one do you want to be in? It's like, VHS ain't bad. I watched a lot of VHS growing up, but Blu-ray's just kind of better on an objective level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is, most of the work I've done throughout my career has been kind of in this nutrition arena. And if there's anything that is as contentious as religion and politics, it's probably nutrition. Like you could start a fight at a family gathering pretty quickly, bringing up some topic around nutrition pretty easily. But the soft sell, and I know you guys do this in the gym, is just, hey, why don't you try this for 30 days? Like you can do anything for 30 days. And what's fascinating is if folks pull a lot of the refined carbs out, some people notice that they do better without gluten. Some people, it's not an issue, but oftentimes people have literally never had a day, to say nothing of a week, without these certain types of foods or the amounts of these types of foods. So they don't really know what a true normal is. And then when they experience that, then they can at least make an informed decision. They're like, it's okay. I still love my big gulps. And you're like, okay, fine. No harm, no foul, but a lot of people are kind of like, oh, okay, I'll switch to diet and I won't feel terrible all the time. It's like, okay, that's a win, Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. How did you get into kind of low carb paleo? Like, what was the kind of impetus for that for you? I kind of know some of that, but I think it's a great and interesting thing to talk about. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is going back now, 1996, 1997. My training academically was in biochemistry, and I was looking at either an MD route or a PhD route, and was really kind of torn and conflicted on both of those, and had been doing some tinkering with my diet because I've always been interested in this stuff. I was a California state powerlifting champion a long time ago, literally a lifetime ago, but had fiddled with a very low fat, high carb vegan diet. So no animal products, no dairy. And I know that that can work for some folks, but for me, it was a terrible fit. Like I developed a lot of different health problems. Maybe the most severe within that was ulcerative colitis. And I'm a reasonably muscular, like $165, $170. I got down to 125 pounds from malabsorption issues. You know, I mean, I was dying for all intents and purposes. Like I just was not absorbing nutrients. I had multiple nutrient deficiencies going on, and it was kind of a bit of an act of desperation that this idea of a low carb paleo ancestral type diet got on my radar. And I was facing either a bowel resection or some really gnarly immunosuppressant drugs. And I knew enough about medicine at that point that neither of those options were good over the long haul. And so I gave this a shot. And for me, it was just literally life-saving. And the kind of cool thing about that is that where some people in the kind of health and fitness realm, they become known for abs or butts or skinny jeans or whatever. I'm kind of the poop guy. Like I'm kind of the digestion expert. And so I've really focused, although I'm fascinated by elite athletic performance and whatnot, my real passion is helping people specifically with autoimmune and gut issues to get healthier, because it can literally save their life. Both my mom and my wife's mother both died from complications from rheumatoid arthritis. And we have been able to help thousands of people with RA and multiple sclerosis and similar autoimmune diseases. And so again, although it's cool to work with like a real top of the food chain athlete, I've found mainly my role working with athletes is as a speed bump. I just mainly keep them from killing themselves with training. And I find that kind of uninteresting, but somebody tough enough to get into UFC or be an Olympic caliber athlete, like they don't need motivation. They don't need a cheerleader to get them off the couch. Like they really need somebody to like slow them down oftentimes and get them to do some meditation and restoration and stuff like that. But, somebody who is legitimately sick, that the mainstream medical circles have said, hey, this is it. You've got surgery or medication, and that's your option. Diet doesn't influence your digestive health, which I find fascinating. It would be like going to a dermatologist, and it's like, hey, doc, I was crawling around in a bunch of weeds. I don't know what any of them are, and I have this head-to-toe rash. Is there a relationship there? And the dermatologist would be like, yeah, idiot, of course there's a relationship there, But I would venture that probably most gastroenterologists and most physicians, because when they read the literature, different dietary changes haven't really influenced the outcome of, these chronic degenerative diseases. But I would go out on a limb and say it's because they haven't really done sufficient dietary change. They're kind of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So yeah, I know that's kind of a long, wandery answer, but it was a health crisis that really got me going in this direction. And then I have really enjoyed focusing more on trying to find folks that really need some help and giving them another option outside of just kind of the mainstream answer, which is surgery and medication, which those things can absolutely be appropriate in some circumstances. But we have a lot more headroom out there if we had smart nutrition and lifestyle changes, and slowly that information's getting out there.
Sure. I mean, I beat this horse before, but like, Just you look at the standard American diet, and if you have a passport and you've spent a little time outside of the U.S., just it's always striking the moment you come back. Just everything gets bigger. I don't know if you remember Super Mario Brothers 3 World 4, where everything's just bigger. Like the turtles are just bigger. Everything's just bigger. Like it's true of like streets and cars and general stuff, but just the people are just bigger. Like, and it's very so pronounced. And just clearly diet is the key there. I mean, to me, like it's just such an obvious kind of. I lived in Europe for like about half a year, and I mean, this is kind of my own weak point or whatever. But I'm from Iowa originally, and I just kind of thought white people are fat. Like that's just sort of what I thought. You grew up in Iowa; it's mostly white people. You go to Europe, and it's still predominantly white people, but they're suddenly not nearly as fat. Like they're all kind of skinny, like relative to Iowa at least, and. You go to sit down at a table and the meal is just considerably smaller. Like it's just, and it's still good and you feel satiated and you walk away and I was like, that was a good meal. But like the American in me would look at meals and it was like, oh my God, this is so fatty or something. But it was so small. I was like, I won't get full.
Right.
But I would be full, like no problem. Like with just like a brick-sized lasagna, I was fine instead of like a 3 brick-sized lasagna at like Olive Garden or something. I was actually more satisfied, and it had like all the cheese and the butter and all that kind of stuff on it. But I just remember coming back to the States and the plate size would just shock me by itself. Like would just be like, oh my God, like I can't believe you gave me so much food, sort of. And I don't know. America needs to have some major course correct on that at some point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you go for it.
Well, I was going to ask you a question because we were kind of talking about this on social media a little bit recently, but what would you do? Like, and I know you lean towards kind of non-government intervention solutions for almost anything, but if you were in a position of authority, what would you do on a large-scale intervention? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you had some national intervention ability. What would you do? Like, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. So, and some of this will anger some people. The other will anger everybody else. So, as usual, I will manage to anger everybody with this answer. But at the beginning, I would gut farm subsidies, like subsidizing our food system. I really nervous about the moral hazard involved with that. And when you really, I just wrote a book with my good friend Diana Rogers called Sacred Cow, and we look at the environmental, ethical, and health considerations of a meat-inclusive food system, and we really get in and talk a lot about the subsidies that have led to basically propping up the junk food industry. Like we didn't have a junk food industry before farm subsidies became a thing. So I think that that's just a beginning place. Like I'm actually nervous about taxing things on the back end.
Sure.
Because you could make a case that taxing, say, like sodas would be a good idea, but then many people feel like meat and butter are bad things. And I don't actually agree with that. And I think that it could be a really slippery slope. So instead of looking at taxing things punitively on the back end, I would gut the subsidies system. And then I would take our current medical system, the American Medical Association, I believe is a monopoly, and I think it would be easy to make the case that it's a monopoly. And I would take that and our insurance systems, and I would break it all up into about 10 different entities, and then I would have them all compete against each other. And then that way, all of the kind of BS that occurs around, like, you read one study one week that meat is good for you, and another study the next week that meat's going to give you cancer. That would sort all of this out immediately because it would remarkably align the incentives for people to legitimately find what works. And what works is different kind of from person to person, but there is kind of a reality that a largely whole food-based, non-processed diet is going to win. And then I would rejigger things so that whether folks were relatively poor or wealthy, that they had some skin in their healthcare experience. In Singapore, they have an HSA, a health savings account based medical system, so that even if I and my family are reasonably poor, instead of just given kind of a carte blanche medical access, you're actually distributed money into an account that is yours. It is inheritable. Like if you die, that money can be passed on to your your children and what have you, but there's real buy-in. That is your money, and it is yours to do with as makes sense for your healthcare. And so you have to have some skin in the game with your healthcare experience. And then all of a sudden, when you start thinking about like, well, man, this bariatric surgery looks kind of interesting, but I'm going to have nothing left over for the rest of my healthcare, or this pharmaceutical or this thing or that thing. And then you start really the incentives for doing dietary change and healthcare modification and whatnot is really well aligned. And so I think that something like this, it ticks a lot of the different kind of like socio-political boxes. There is a safety net there. People aren't going to fall through and have absolutely no security in case that things go really bad for them. But it's also not set up in a way where this could turn into a multi-generational trap. So yeah, those are some of the big picture things that I would do. And there are examples of systems being run more like this. And really right at the very beginning, I would break up the American Medical Association again and have several different entities that have similar kind of certifying and credentialing power, but they are absolutely separate and they're absolutely competing against one another. And then over the course of 10, 15 years, best practices will really sort out what we need to do. And just as a real quick closer, this is very similar to what Bill Clinton did during welfare reform way back when. Instead of one federal level implementation in modifying welfare, he kicked it back to the states. All 50 states did a bunch of experiments. A lot of the experiments were an absolute disastrous failure, but a couple of them were really stand out and pretty good. And then those best practices got brought back up to kind of the federal level. So yeah, I am kind of that centrist, libertarian leaning person. I'm okay with some social, safety nets, but again, I don't want them to turn into multi-generational traps. And I think it's critical that folks have some skin in the game.
Sure. Makes all sense. Yeah. That was really interesting. Cool. Tell us a little bit about the Healthy Rebellion.
Yeah, I was going to say, since that would be a great top-down program, but when it's not a feasible idea at this point, you can also go bottom up, like grassroots level. And I think that's what you're trying to do at the Healthy Rebellion level. So tell us more about that and how it's been helping folks there.
Yeah.
Healthier.
Yeah, it's a mainly an online community that what we're trying to do, backing up a little bit, 3 years ago, we noticed that our site traffic for my main website, we got up one day and the site traffic had reduced by like 97%. We just we had no idea why. And as a consequence, our income had reduced by 97%. And so it was kind of a big deal. And about a week went by, and then a number of news articles came out, and Google had updated their algorithms such that a number of people in kind of the low carb ancestral health space had basically been shadow banned via Google. And we had spent over a decade building huge numbers of link backs and quality content and updating content so that we had a very robust presence on Google for organic traffic, and for reasons that I won't really get into because it's pretty speculative, but there is definitely a reality that a good number of people saw their traffic just curtailed massively. And again, this was 3 years ago, and so that was a big wake up call for us that all of our routes towards reaching people, whether it was Facebook or different social media platforms, or the organic reach on via Google, some big entities that clearly didn't like what we had to say were taking a pretty good notice of us. And we were kind of like, is this it? Do we do we sell everything and go farm coconuts, or what do we do at this point? And this was also pretty early in the beginnings of cancel culture, which I think has just accelerated and gotten on steroids in the intervening time. But there were a variety of things that goosed me in the direction of having a place that was similar to Facebook and kind of an old style bulletin board web forum kind of interface where we could share experiences. The Healthy Rebellion helps move people through these 3 or 4 times a year resets that include sleep, food, movement, and community interaction. And it's been really successful. Like we've had phenomenal buy-in, and I think the timing of COVID is interesting. Like it kind of accelerated both the need for some type of community, some type of contact, but it largely needs to be remote. And then also the kind of insanity that seems to typify social media has also accelerated. So people have been kind of leaving social media in the droves. And so the goal of the Healthy Rebellion is to help move 1 million people out of the sick care system. And we have kind of a 3-tiered piece to that. The first thing is that we help people understand what their metabolic health is. And we work with an outfit called Precision Health Reports to establish what their metabolic health is with some advanced testing. It's actually very inexpensive, but very sophisticated. Hopefully people are metabolically healthy, and then we move on to the other stuff. But if they are not, then we construct a plan to help move them through things. And then we do encourage people to find some sort of a functional medicine practitioner. If you get hit by a bus or get shot, then I think our standard medical scene is very good for that stuff. If you have any type of chronic degenerative disease, I think that it's pretty poor in being able to help manage that stuff. And so we encourage kind of more of a functional medicine approach to address root cause. And then finally, this kind of actually loops back a little bit to, like if I could wave a magic wand and change healthcare, we strongly encourage people to explore things like health shares, which are pretty common within different religious communities, and then also MediShares, because these outfits tend to incentivize things in a way that people really do have skin in the game of their healthcare experience. So there isn't this notion that like everything's going to be a copay, everything's going to be, a free doctor visit. Like you actually, it's kind of like getting maintenance on your car. Like everything costs something, but it shouldn't cost so much that it absolutely bankrupts you. In the 1940s, Americans spent 20% of their income on food and 10% of their income on healthcare. Today, we spend 10% of our income on food and 20% of our income on healthcare. Oh, wow. And so the net hasn't really changed, but clearly the outcome has. And I think that we need to accept that we need to spend more on food to be able to spend less on healthcare. And so that is kind of the big picture goal of the Healthy Rebellion.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a member of the Healthy Rebellion, so I enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, I think one of the things I enjoy most about it is just I don't know, the politeness of it all. I mean, like, I'm sure that I haven't read every single exchange on Healthy Rebellion, so I'm sure someone has gotten a little snarky at some point, but like just relative to like going on Instagram or going on Facebook or something, like it just feels people are basically aligned in a certain direction. But beyond that, I do see disagreements on things, but like just a trend towards like being respectful and just kind of like, I don't know. The exchanges are always so amicable and just kind of with the best interest of pursuing a topic and understanding that topic better rather than like, I don't know. When I go on Facebook or Instagram, which I try to avoid, I can't avoid it as a business owner, but like just some of those comments, it's like
very argumentative and
confrontational. Yes, it's confrontational, and sometimes I'm like, why do you want confrontation in your life? Kind of like there's times where I read a comment, I think like, but why? Like, why do you even bother with that? I don't even understand. Like,
if Facebook and Instagram required $1 a year as a membership, it would dramatically transformed.
Sure.
The civility, you know, just that degree of skin in the game would cause so many people to be like, oh, I'm out, you know, because they're so not invested in that.
Right.
Kaylee, I think that this kind of circles back to your point. This really is a grassroots effort, and the fact that the folks spend $20-$30 a month to be part of this community, they're invested in it, you know, and we do some moderating and curating, like, hey, we can be more kind there, but generally we don't need to. Like, we have some very frisky debates, but people lay out their case. It's I remember these old, like, black and white, like William F. Buckley. They're like smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and having like a 3-hour long debate, and it's a lot more like that. You know, because the folks do have skin in the game, and they're invested not in the place, but also in each other. Even when they disagree with someone, they're still invested in them.
Yeah, no, I've picked up some just marvelous health tips off of the Healthy Rebellion from various things that people share, all the different things that they're into. And I've picked up some great stuff. Like I've talked about on the podcast, on our podcast, we've talked about the sauna stuff, and I picked that up off Healthy Rebellion. I like red light therapy stuff too. I picked that up off Healthy Rebellion. And then just like a lot of, like, I don't know, even just some great barbecue stuff. So
yeah,
for people that are looking for a non-sugar based barbecue rub and just little things like that, you know, because almost everybody I know locally in Texas, if I ask them for a good rub, it's like first ingredient brown sugar, like, or maybe salt, but like, yeah, it's like mostly sugar. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's good, but it's not really what I'm trying to do. So.
I also like the Healthy Rebellion radio shows that you and Nikki do. I listen to them whenever I have time, and I like how, you know, you take questions from people and then address those questions, and then some of the questions are really kind of, you know, relevant. Like you've been wondering about that, but you don't know how to go about it. You can't really Google, because like Google is such a, I don't know, such a vast ocean. You don't know which one to really trust. Whereas I think it's good to have some sort of a good, reliable source of information, and people can actually ask direct questions. So tell us a little more about that as well, just how that goes and how your experience has been with that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. And when my very first podcast was called The Paleo Solution, and that had a 10-year run. I think in total we had like 32 million downloads on it. Like, it was a very successful podcast. It was really good. And it was mainly a Q&A format. And folks really enjoyed it. And then the funny thing with that is that even though I tended to answer very similar questions, like we would try to get breadth and depth on things, but there's just commonalities that pop up. Like you guys teaching jujitsu, you just see the same mistakes, the same topics kind of pop up, you know, again and again, but it's different for each person. Even though you've said it 1,000 to 1,000 other people, the new person in front of you is brand new to it. And this was actually something I did not appreciate. And I figured, oh, people have got to be bored of this. And I actually shifted the show format to an interview-based deal where I would interview authors and different folks. And that was good. And I think a little mix of that isn't bad. But I never asked my listeners, is this a direction you guys would like to go? And in fact, I ended up losing a good number of people because it just wasn't as interesting. It wasn't germane to the topics that they were interested in. And so, you know, in actually chatting with people and, you know, asking them, what do you want? People were like, I really wish you would bring back the Q&A from the old Paleo Solution days. And so we did that. Maybe one show in 10 is some type of an interview now, but it's really targeted. Usually it's a researcher either in, you know, biomedicine or maybe regenerative agriculture or something like that. But it's mainly this Q&A format, and it's interesting because even if folks have heard a question previously, like if someone who is asking the question is more like you, they have more similar life experiences. If you're female and you've heard the question answered from, you know, pertaining to a male, it may kind of click, but not 100%. Then you hear a similar question addressed to a female. It's like, oh, this totally clicks. So I think it's interesting for me and really cool in that having this pretty big listener base, they get exposure to everything. I mean, every new topic. And so it's kind of almost like a news aggregator for me in that somebody will put in a new question. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that. And then I can get in and do a couple of days or even weeks of research on the topic and get up to speed on it. And then maybe have a half decent chance at providing some context. Like, we're not providing medical advice, but I will help explain, okay, here's this new technology, say like DNA sequencing to address your specific athletic needs. I think there's some interesting promise there, but I think also the claims that a lot of people make are really overblown. Like, the science just isn't there yet. And so being able to put some things in context around that, it helps people make decisions about how they allocate their time and resources. So it's cool in that it's a conversation legitimately with people. And then also it is the place that I continue to learn the most, because you have a couple of 100,000 people out looking around at everything in the health and wellness, regenerative ag space, and then they shoot in these questions. And so if there's anything new or kind of a different take or angle on stuff, then I get to kind of dig in and hash that stuff out and hopefully provide some good value around that.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying listening to those episodes, and I got a lot of information. But like you said, I find it most helpful when I find the questioner very close to me or similar to me, and I find that question really relevant to me, and then really it does stay with me, the answers that you and Nikki give out. So
I'm shooting out a parallel to jiu-jitsu there. I mean, this is kind of very apropos of what I was talking about with the students last night. Just a lot of techniques, just even for you and I, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I know how to do an Americana, for example. It's like, or I know how to do an arm bar, but it's like, and you do, and you maybe even heard those details before, but they don't always stick, like, and you see it again, you're like, oh, that's where that knee goes, or like, there's like actually a tremendous amount of moving parts, I think, in a lot of questions, or, and so like, yeah, I feel like I'm always still, I just feel like, I don't know, I find it weird in the realm of jiu-jitsu when people are like, I already know how to do an arm bar. I'm like, because I know how to do an arm bar, I know that there are like 100 moving parts that I could be infinitely ratcheting to a tighter level.
Right.
So I keep wanting to learn it again and again and again. Not like, I mean, yeah, I've finished people with an arm bar, but like, it's not, that doesn't mean it can't be better and better and better. I mean, that's kind of the whole SBG ideology for, fundamentals and stuff, but yeah. What's on the horizon for you? What's kind of new? What do I not know about? And like, what should people know about?
Well, you guys do know a little bit about this. As much as we love the hill country, and we moved here coming up on 2 years ago and managed to rope you guys into moving here. The way that COVID has changed the world, we were kind of feeling like we were too far away from our family, and so we are going to be moving to the Montana area, which fortunately there are some other straight blast gyms up in that area, but we're going to be moving early March. But it's interesting because the sense that I had about coming to the Texas Hill Country, maybe kind of New Braunfels in particular, was just that it was this really fascinating mix of some long-standing, deep culture and tradition. And I was one of the people that moved here not to change the culture, but for the culture. Like, I wanted the family values, nuclear family, ethical treatment of the people that we share our community with and everything. And that has been I've found it to be a truth and is one of the, kind of crown jewels of being in an area like this. We met amazing people that we're going to have lifelong friendships with, and to do that in 2 years, and during half of that 2-year time being during a pandemic when, although Texas was much more open than many states were, like, our movement and our activities were dramatically curtailed compared to what it was before that. But it really speaks amazingly to this area and all the opportunities that, are right at our fingertips here. So it's a very bittersweet kind of thing. Like when we moved into this house here, we were like, okay, this is our forever house, or at least until the kids are out of school and all that stuff. And then as the pandemic wore on and whatnot, and kind of looking at the fact that we have been really unable to see other family, and some of the draw that I had for being here was the ability to travel. And, being halfway between San Antonio and Austin, I had 2 amazing airports to pull from. And a big chunk of my life previously was doing speaking gigs all over the world. And I just don't really know if that's ever going to spin up again. And so for a variety of reasons, but mainly the family piece and kind of the way that COVID has kind of altered the world, we are moving to Montana soon. But above and beyond that, we're just kind of head down trying to help as many people as we can within this healthy rebellion world. We are getting some really great traction with Element. We are the hydration sponsor for Team USA Olympic weightlifting. We're now in just a host of different professional sports, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, lots of college teams. And so we're getting some really good buy-in there. Great buy-in within the military, particularly the special operations communities. So I feel like we're providing just some amazing benefit and value to the folks in these, a lot of these frontline worker folks. So we're just hammer and tongs trying to move all of that forward. And hopefully I'm going to continue motoring along in jiu-jitsu. That is kind of the thing that brought all of us together, kind of the central thing. So looking forward to motoring forward on that.
I mean, as sad as we are to see you go, because we love the Wolf family, I think it's great that you guys are moving to Montana, because they have like awesome SPG gyms, and that's where we learn all this great, things, great knowledge. And Travis Davison and Kisa Davison, they are the heart of our kids program, Growing Gorillas program, and just the whole SPG system that's been just nothing but wonderful. So I think you're in good hands. I'm excited for you to have continue your jiu-jitsu journey there with great people there. So
well, thank you. And I just have to sing y'all's praises real quick, because Nikki and I did found the first and fourth CrossFit affiliate gyms in the world. And the way that CrossFit was set up, it not only did not provide business structure for people investing their lives in the CrossFit brand, it was pretty openly antagonistic towards people trying to organize and systematize business systems. Like we kind of got on the bad side of CrossFit HQ for a number of years, just trying to help people better run their businesses. And, the first 5 years in business, it was a disaster. It was we exposed people to too much volume, too much intensity. We had huge attrition, and people just kind of blow that stuff off. But even if you're in a rather large community, there are only so many people that are going to do what you have to offer. And if you break or drive away the vast majority of those people, at some point you have a completely non-viable business. And to y'all's props, like you went up and studied with Travis and Kisa, and to infinite gratitude to those guys for sitting down and really systematizing a business that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most complex combat sport on the planet. And they've systematized it in a way, the business side of this stuff, to say nothing of the way that the general curriculum flows out, that it is accessible to children and the elderly and women and the disabled. I mean, anybody can do it, particularly under this kind of straight blast model. And I know at various points, when you guys were making decisions, this is the advice I've had. I don't know if I want to do it. And you guys really dug in and stuck to the advice that was given to you. And you guys have done great. Like for a year, coming up year and a half, being open. And again, almost the whole amount of that time being in a pandemic, you've done amazingly well on it. I think it speaks just volumes both to both of you, but also just this overarching like straight blast gym methodology and philosophy, and that goes all the way from teaching children how to effectively do jujitsu, but then, punches into the business system side.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, but it's been really great. I don't think we could have really done what we have done so far without the system, the help of all the people at SBG, Travis and Kisa and Andy, and of course, Rob too. Been really instrumental in our good start, and success overall. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys have been there for us right from the very beginning and everything. From the moment we arrived in Texas, you guys
received us with open arms when we didn't have anybody here.
We had very selfish reasons. We needed people to do jiu-jitsu with.
So. But yeah, anyways, it's been great having you on the show. Actually, one last question. This is that Brett Dillon gave us this great question, but is there any question that we should have asked you
before we let you go?
Yeah.
No, because I'm really trying not to become the victim of cancel culture. So no, we probably did pretty good right now.
Sure. No, I understand that. Okay. Well, it's been great having you on the show, Rob, and I'm sure you'll be a bit of a winter Texan over the years. Like,
it's already in the planning. We're looking at the fact that it's minus 14 degrees in Kalispell right now, and we're like, this will be a good part of the year to come back down and visit friends in New Braunfels. Yeah,
sure.
And we'll be there too for sure. We have a lot of great friends and people there in Montana. I'm sure we'll regularly visit there, so we'll see you guys there too.
I look forward to eventually being a summer Montanan.
Oh yeah, having you winter Texans.
Yep.
Well, take care, Rob. Good luck with all your endeavors.
You too. Thank you, guys.